I mean, I wasn't obviously directly involved with it, but
Yeah.
I was living not far from, or I was down the road from it, and I was fortunate to one of my mates sent me a message that there was a shooter or
Hmm.
some sort of shooting that was going on pretty early on,
Yeah.
and I was just at home, and as soon as I heard about that, I started putting messages out that, hey, look, I think there's an active shooter situation, because it's definitely unheard of in New Zealand.
Right.
Everyone sort of reacted, well, quite slowly when.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the police reacted pretty quickly. They were there within 6 minutes, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was just at home, and I was sitting there because this is my hometown.
Yeah.
I've been born and raised in Christchurch. This is where I live now. And as soon as I heard that, I simply just couldn't just sit there and let that go on, and the guy,
Yeah.
because he literally just went in with a huge amount of ammunition. He had two semi-automatic rifles. I think they were like AK looking variants, like
Yeah.
Chinese copies or something.
Yeah.
And he
That's
had two.
7.62 rounds.
Yeah, I think he had a Norinco, which is, or I know, yeah, at least one of them was actually 5.56.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'm not too sure whether he had 7.62 as well.
Yeah. For most people, like obviously some of our
Oh,
audience is definitely going to know what that is, but the 7.62 round, the bullet that's
mm,
actually coming out of it is way larger in a 7.62 than it is in a 5.56. And the
yeah,
5.56 is just think of AR-15s or M4 rifles that the U.S. and kind of standard for a lot of military services, but China,
mm,
Russia, a lot of the big ones, and of course, all of the Middle East all use 7.62, the much larger bullet, and the AK-47. But yeah, just go ahead and give a just basic overview, a little bit about you, what your
mhm.
background is, and then kind of what it is that you do now.
Yeah. So my name's David Long, and I've been brought up in Christchurch, New Zealand. And, I joined the army, the New Zealand Army, straight out of high school
Hmm.
when I was 17, and then that was back in 2004. 2005, I was already in Afghanistan as an infantry soldier.
How long were you in Afghanistan for that deployment? I'm just
Um,
curious.
so our tours would go for 6 months.
Okay.
Uh, I heard you guys go for much longer than that,
So that
especially.
so we typically do, and that's why I ask because I was on the special operations side, so our deployments are much shorter than the typical because we're just doing operations 1 to 2 a night every night, the whole time we're there in theater. So ours is just a blast. I mean, you're just sprinting the entire time, and then you get replaced, but your time back over at home and getting ready and train up before you come back is usually only a few months as well, maybe 6, 9 months if you're lucky, typically, and then we're right back at it.
Yeah, I saw that you guys your tempo was much higher. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, our special operations as well. We had guys at Camp Vance inside Bagram
yep,
Air Force Base. But I was stationed out in Bamiyan province, which is just smack bang right in the middle of Afghanistan. Pretty
yeah,
benign up there, to be honest.
yeah.
No,
Not a lot going on a daily basis.
well, we're up in the mountains. We're
Yeah,
literally, we're a part of a PRT, and we were just, a provincial reconstruction team,
okay,
and we were just doing, basic presence patrols like counterinsurgency,
hmm.
driving up and down the same roads, which was not ideal because
Right,
you're surrounded by cliffs, and we're driving down valleys and everything, so it wasn't ideal. So the main threat was them just putting IEDs in the road.
right. Because
Um,
there's only one road here. It's carved into the side of a mountain. It's
yeah,
not like you can drive around it or there's other alternate routes. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Well, we had where I was heading all the time. We'd go for an 8 hour sort of drive from our camp to a FOB up in like just some old police station we'd taken over. And then we'd occupy like an old school or something like that, and we'd just always be staying in those sort of positions and just fortify those positions, and those were our sort of places that we would operate from.
Yeah.
And
I remember when I first learned what a FOB was, because I was like, a FOB? They're like, yeah, FOB. It's forward operating base. It's basically, we just go take over a little spot. A FOB can be anything. It doesn't have to have walls. It doesn't have to have, as long as you say, this is my FOB, this is where I'm at, then that makes it a FOB. And they get named things and they get built up, but a lot of them, especially when at the beginning, because I was there for the invasion of Iraq, was my first of 4 deployments. I joined the military in 1999, dating myself there a little bit. And I actually, 4 tours later, with the Ranger Regiment, I got out in 05. You know, in the U.S., we were the ones attacked. We're the ones kind of leading the way on the whole war on terror. What was that like for you coming from New Zealand? And was this a FOB that like you guys established, or was just one that had kind of been set up a little bit and you guys just occupied it?
Well, we had a couple of places that we'd simply occupied. There was one that was an old police station, but it didn't have any wall around it, so we would just put some barbed wire. We'd make our own sort of fence. And
not very good for stopping RPGs or bullets.
No, well, there was one time one of the other patrols on another deployment actually got attacked at that position quite hard, and luckily they'd set up a 50 cal and nice. made an actual Singer, like a elevated position. They had weapons all stationed everywhere, so they reacted pretty well to it. But the Singer got a direct hit with an RPG. There was no damage to the 50, so our confidence with that weapon system was pretty good. But then there was another place that we were staying at. We built up quite a bit. We'd taken over from an American Special Forces team, this place called Ramiro. Yeah, and it was a fire base. But when we were there, we were like, man, this is not positioned well. Like they'd put HESCO walls all around it, and it was well fortified. But we were surrounded by high ground. They'd been attacked a few times. Yeah, we'd have to just stay in local houses and just mud walls.
Yeah. Wow, that's wild. And the HESCOs, which that's what you said earlier, the barbed wire, it was HESCOs, which is just a big, massive, empty box, not made of wood, made of cloth. Mostly it's made of cloth to dump dirt into. And then if you're lucky, you have tractors that dump the dirt in, because it takes tons and tons and tons literal of dirt to fill one of those things up. But essentially you just have a wall of sand around you instead of sandbags like in World War I and World War II. They're literally having to hand fill little sandbags. Was there any highlight or kind of specific mission that you kind of really remember that sticks out in your mind?
Well, because I did 2 tours there, and nothing really significant. It's not like we were involved with massive battles or anything like that. Well, when I was there, both times was in the winter. So the activity was much lower. So all we were doing was really dealing with IEDs all the time, just finding them in the ground. There was one time.
Did you guys get hit with any of those IEDs?
No, not
you
me.
Personally,
yeah, we would drive over them. We would have electronic countermeasures to deal with different types of radio control IEDs.
Right. And that's what they like to use up there, right?
Yeah.
Was the cell phone, just dial the number and it sends off a signal.
Yeah, to be honest, it was pretty frustrating, because my second tour, that was like 7 months, and it was patrolling every day. I was in the Humvee. My job was the gunner. I had a 50 with, because you've got usually a 100-round belt. I had armor piercing incendiary rounds. I took that ammo tin out and I would swap it out with a 40 millimeter GMG, or you guys at the Mark 19.
Basically like a grenade launching machine gun.
Yeah. Well, I basically put the 50 onto the Mark 19 mount so I could fit a bigger ammo tin.
Yeah.
So the ammo tins were way bigger. And I would link them all together. So instead of a 100-round belt, I would have 240-round belt.
Nice.
And then I would have, another ammo tin right next to it with a bit of bungee. So I could swap out the ammo tin real quick.
Right.
I basically got the idea while I was trying to track down some of these armor-piercing incendiary high explosive rounds that this American Apache pilot told me about, that because I was talking to him, what ammo does he have on his Apache?
Yeah.
And he told me those rounds, and I was like, man, I need to get some of those for my 50. And yeah. And then I also had a GPMG, so we got this other machine gun called Mag 58, pretty much identical to your 240 Bravo.
Yeah, the 240 Bravo.
Yeah.
That's the largest hand-carried machine gun. I got to carry that all through Ranger School quite a bit. It's a beast.
Yeah.
It replaced the 60, the Hog, the Hog that Rambo in the old Rambo movies. The famous scene where he's holding the ammo and he's firing it with one hand. That was a whole thing because it's such a heavy beast to try to fire, and he's trying to hold with one hand and hold the links with the other. So it's funny you say that about finding and or acquiring those types of rounds that you just heard about from a helicopter pilot, because I watched a documentary just recently on Vietnam veteran, and it was the gun trucks. That was it. It was the gun trucks of Vietnam, and it was either on HBO Max or Prime or one of those under the documentaries. And they talked about how they acquired these massive guns to mount onto these huge trucks that they were delivering, all the goods to the front lines, to the guys that are forward operating bases in Vietnam. And they literally just went onto a ship and literally stole huge, massive machine guns, and then somehow hauled those back and mounted those on these trucks. And it was a big competition because everybody would go out and then mysteriously show back up with these crazy wazoo guns to mount on their trucks. And the bigger the guns, the bigger the armor, the more likely you were to succeed or at least be feared. And so supposedly, some trucks wouldn't get hit as much because the Viet Cong could see that they had the bigger guns and they would just annihilate them. So it's funny how that's universal. New Zealand soldiers, American soldiers, Vietnam, present day war on terror. It's all the same. It's guys are trying to get things done, which are going to save your life and save your mates' lives.
Oh yeah,
that's funny.
It's exactly It's literally what we do all the time. We don't have the money. We literally we just don't have much money.
That's luxury we do have.
Yeah. We would literally scrounge for everything possible. Even if we go to the range and we get given some here's your ammo, and I'm gonna say, well, I'm gonna actually keep some of that.
Right.
Because the first time I went, because I ended up that Mag 58 or the M240 Bravo, I ended up linking up 1,000-round belt, and I just made a setup so I could just basically fire that weapon system if I was to fire the 50, once the barrels started getting hot, then I can swap over.
I was about to say.
I can just swap over to that weapon system and just start firing. But then I can change that barrel out real quick with I basically made this improvised barrel change mount, so I could literally just take the fresh barrel off and chuck that on, and it was good. But the frustrating thing was going back to your original point, was there was nothing happening. Where we were, it was like my job was to stand in this turret, and sometimes it'd be like 16 hours of standing there. The only time I would literally touch the ground would be to go take a piss somewhere, and I'm just constantly scanning the high ground looking for threats. As soon as I see somebody, I'm doing my little assessment on this guy. What's he up to? Driving into a village, looking for any kind of anomalies within the environment, see if there's any changes. I got quite acute to that, picking up little little signals that, hey, look, something's not right in this area. But I saw some guy up on the high ground, and I was just straight away, I knew something was going on. because we would already have walked that ground, because we wouldn't just do mounted operations within vehicles. Sometimes we'd get out and we'd actually walk up the mountains and find evacuation routes that the Taliban were using,
Right.
or infiltration routes that they were coming in, and we're finding little ambush sites that they were using.
Yeah.
We're doing OP, so like an observation post on on different villages and stuff like that, just gaining
Gotcha.
intelligence.
Yeah. So that's mostly you guys were doing more so the support role of just trying to hold this foothold that we have, and then, essentially just not let the Taliban come back in and retake that,
Yeah,
and then we would have to refight to get it back.
that's right.
For you, I'm just curious, what was your, because I'm US, and again, this is our war on terror from New Zealand, like what was the attitude of the guys that you were serving with toward wanting to go on deployments, not wanting to go on these deployments? Kind of what was that like in your experience?
Oh, it was literally everybody wants to try to get on a deployment. I mean, if you can
Yeah.
imagine, our army's quite small. We've got 5,000 plus, or I don't know what the actual number is now, but yeah, you're looking at about 5,000 or maybe 4,500 people in the army in our country.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
when we were there, like our deployments, we may have about between 80 and 100 people. That was our contingent. So going to Bagram, where there's, I don't know how many people were there. I think it was 12,000 people were there when I went there the first time, and I don't know how many were the second time I
I
went
believe
there.
it. Just the SOCOM compound alone, I mean, there had to been hundreds and hundreds of people for all the combined special operations that were there at any given time. And it's obviously we do change out, like another Ranger battalion. Ranger battalion will come in and swap us out, and then the same thing will happen with the other units, the SEALs, the other special operations pilots, all that. But they're only there, that exchange is very, very brief, and then they're out the door. So you're not doing missions with double up people until the surge happened, which was kind of a unique thing in and of itself, especially with the plan. Now I love talking about this, but I do want to go ahead and just get back on track of because you're there, Christchurch, you've been born and raised in New Zealand. I'm just curious more about that. And I apologize if I was already kind of leading us down the road on the military side. I could talk about that forever, but really I want to make sure and focus for our audience that are young men that are, at risk for, becoming school shooters, that are depressed, that are nihilistic, that are, and just, I want people to hear from people that are in the communities that are affected, and just, to recognize that so many people are affected, and it is just such a soul crushing thing when somebody commits an atrocity like that, where innocent people are being murdered for the sake of a high body count, as it's kind of referred to now, almost like it's a video game. It's some game to be played, and an achievement to be made on a video game. So if you would just kind of walk us through how that went for you just that day, if you want to, of where you heard. I know you already said that you had heard about it and you started sending out messages. That was on social media, I'm assuming.
Yeah, just on Facebook. I just started monitoring that, and just trying to warn everybody that something was going down. And then because a little bit of an overview on the actual event. So it was March 15th, I think, 2019, and there was this Australian citizen, because New Zealand isn't actually part of Australia. That some people get that mixed up, and we're still quite far away from, or we're pretty much far away from everything. This individual come over from Australia, and he was living in New Zealand for, I think, a couple of years, and he was planning to do an attack on Muslim people. He was a extreme right-wing ideology, highly racist, and he was a lone wolf. He operated alone. He didn't have any sort of support from, well, as far as we're aware,
direction or anything.
He wasn't part of a terrorist organization or anything like that. So he was just motivated by his own racist views, essentially, from what we've gathered, and and then he just wanted to kill as many Muslims as possible that were living in New Zealand. And essentially this guy had acquired, he had huge amount of ammunition. He had 2 semi-automatic rifles, 2 shotguns, and an IED, or possibly more IEDs in his vehicle.
Yeah, which is just a bomb. That's an improvised explosive device. Just think of just a bomb. It can be a pipe bomb. It could be detonated multiple different ways. Just a bomb of some sort.
And this guy had been planning this event for years. Went through the classic terrorist attack cycles. Essentially, he would have been doing a lot of surveillance on his targets that he wanted to carry out the attack.
Right.
So that built up over a period of time, and when he actually attacked, he waited for everyone, all these Muslims, to have their Friday prayers. There was 2 target locations, Al Noor Mosque, and there was another one, the Linwood Mosque, and that was just down the road from where I was at the time. And that was the first location that I went to. But when he carried out the attack, so essentially he started filming it on a GoPro. I think he was wearing body armor and a helmet as well. And he literally just walked in to this mosque, and this guy just walked up to him and said, "Hello, brother," just welcoming him in. And the guy just started shooting indiscriminately. I think it was about 40 plus people within that first mosque. And he literally walked into the main prayer room and just started unloading into this crowd of innocent people. And there was children in there as well.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
That's such evil.
Yeah, and when you think about it, these, it doesn't matter what religion or anything like they're just normal people, and they're just going to a place. Imagine being in that situation. Even like if you survived, you'd be still to this day going. You'd probably have anxiety for the rest of your life. Huge amount of PTSD.
And that's one of the things that PTS, post traumatic stress. The D has been added on there. Of course, it was started by the military to deal with the people that were really bad, that couldn't function anymore. Now we've moved on to a lot of different variations of PTS. There's PTSI, there's other, and a lot of people just stop at PTS because you can get post-traumatic stress and not have a disorder from it. I know of people, have witnessed people having to jump in a ditch when he heard a loud bang go off. And, it was just a cannon firing that was just part of a ceremony, right? But for him in that moment, even though he had already seen this, he'd already heard this cannon firing many times, it caught him off guard in that 1 second. His body reacted without him thinking. And I think that's one thing that most people don't understand about post-traumatic stress, especially once it goes over to the disorder side, is your body's reacting without your ability to control it, because it's like if somebody goes to poke you in the eye, you automatically will, step back and swat at it or try to keep that from happening. You don't sit there and go, okay, now I'm going to step back and now I'm going to swat. Your body reacts as it naturally should based on that stressor. For people that have been through these shootings, that's another part, right, of the tragedy of school shootings, church shootings, mass shootings, people driving into people at a parade or at a demonstration. The effects that's having on all the people that weren't even actually hit by a bullet, or those that were hit but were just injured, and even extended out to the relatives. If my son or daughter or my mom or just one of my best friends was in that church, got hit, and I'm sprinting over there. And then lo and behold, I see this carnage. Like that affects people for the rest of their life. And maybe those people get post-traumatic stress disorder for the rest of their life. They're having all these bad dreams and because their mind can't really understand what they had to go through because they just weren't mentally fortified. They weren't mentally prepared to deal with that. Me coming from Oklahoma in the United States where the Oklahoma City bombing was, I was a kid when that happened, but I had family that were there and they were actually just working construction at a building right around the corner. They didn't know what happened, but they were almost knocked off of the side of the building they were working on, and they ran around and saw just body parts in the street, kids, adults, just everywhere. And their mind just froze. They just froze, threw up, and sprinted back to their car and just took off. Like that wasn't something I doubt that they planned, right? Everybody plans to be the hero in that moment. And that's I think one thing that we could definitely share with our audience is like, if you're ever put into a position to where you're seeing something like this or something like this happens to someone that you know, it's okay for you, even though you weren't shot with a bullet, to go talk to somebody. And I get it. A lot of people are going to be very hesitant because they don't have money, because they don't want the stigma of talking to a counselor. I would say you have to talk to somebody though. And this is one thing that I hear from no one ever is you have to talk to someone. Talk to your best friend. I just interviewed a guy who him and his best friend were on the police department together. And one of the very first things they saw, an entire family killed in an auto accident, and they never talked about it. But one of those best friends with each other carried that for 25 years. And it wasn't until they retired at the same time that he finally brought it up in conversation. It was like, I've been dealing with that ever since that happened 25 years ago. Talk to a best friend, talk to your family members, find somebody to just talk that out with. I don't know, and I'm going to ask your opinion here on this. Have you ever talked with somebody about some stressful thing that you've seen or dealt with, and that feels like a weight being lifted, just having used your brain to talk through, to kind of process through that event, and for you to verbalize it, and for somebody else to hear it, and for them to not judge you, to love you afterwards, to not make fun of you. The number of those things that go through people's heads, and the self-talk and doubt and all the negativity of what would happen if I spoke about this out loud, I think keeps a lot of people caged and keeps a lot of people in a lot of pain that they don't need to be in. What are your thoughts on all of that? That's a lot.
Absolutely. Everyone's got to talk about it afterwards with somebody, like you said, because even if there's someone that's just going to sit there and just listen to you, when you start talking to them about it, you might already have the answer. And by talking to them can start helping you find solutions to that issue, whatever it is, especially if it's a significant event. And I think at the end of the day, when we have a look at what the aim is for that shooter, most terrorists aren't actually, or their main victim isn't actually the people that they're killing. It's you that's still breathing. They want you to be crippled with fear. That's why they call them terrorists.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to spread their message, whatever it is, some crazy ideology that they've got. No one really cares. That individual that's carried out that attack is trying to spread that message. They might be trying to get some message to the government to make a change or spread their whatever their agenda is. So they're just using these civilians, because civilian targets are easier to attack because they don't generally carry weapons on them, or not in New Zealand anyway. Maybe a bit different over in the States, but if some guy walks in and just starts shooting a whole bunch of kids, because look at kids aren't going to protect themselves, so to them they're easy. So what that shows is that this person's a coward.
Right.
They're actually weak individuals. They don't have any resources. They can't, what are they trying to, what kind of weapons are they using? Usually it's
Yeah.
pretty basic means to carry out the attack. So there's nothing impressive about it.
Right.
They a whole bunch of kids can, that's pathetic. So
Yeah.
obviously they're just using them as a tool so they can make everybody that's still alive scared of them. They're making a big impact, and to try to spread some message. But look, nobody even remembers that guy what his name is. I'm trying to remember what his name is.
Yeah.
That shooter, and all he's doing is just sitting in his jail cell right now. They're gonna always have some form of perceived justification for what they're doing.
Right.
So I guarantee that
Mm-hmm.
guy's sitting in his jail cell right now, and he still thinks that he's done the right thing in his mind, even though the rest of the world knows that he hasn't done the right thing. It's the complete opposite. So what
Yeah.
that is that if someone ever thinks that is a good idea, has to stop and really start talking to somebody about it if they think that that's ever, because it's never a good idea, and actually go through and go, all right, maybe I should just go see somebody. Maybe I've got some issues here, and talk it through with
Yeah.
somebody. But also, if there has been an event, absolutely talk to somebody as well. There's
Yeah.
always going to be support out there, no matter what situation
Yeah.
you're in. Get somebody you're going to talk to. They're going to listen to you, and then you can deal with those. Or find some solutions and some options for you to take some positive path rather than just spiraling downhill.
I doubt that he just accidentally moved to New Zealand and then accidentally, after 2 years, decided to do this. This was probably part of his plan. And, how long he had planned on that. For somebody like that, shows a level of callous and, most likely psychopathy, being a psychopath and not having normal feelings and understandings. But what we're starting to see in America, and one of the things that honestly kind of blew me away, and one of the many reasons why I decided, this is where I have to fight, is this battlefield right now. And that is school shooters in America. A lot of these children are seeing this as a way to, it's glorified in the small circles that they're in on the internet or on social media or whatever. They end up grouping up with these people. And a lot of times I could see it even starting as just like dark humor and making jokes about things that aren't funny, like, these school shootings. What makes something funny is that it's shocking. So you can have some really dark humor, and because of my background, and I'm sure yours as well, it's easy for us to actually laugh at things that are like, military dark humor jokes, right? Like, well, if you're going out to disarm that bomb, just, don't worry about it. If you don't get it right, you will never have to do it again, right? That's a joke. Like, we're talking about you dying. We're talking about you screwing up and blowing yourself up with that bomb, trying to defuse it. But it's funny, and it takes some of that stress out, and it actually relaxes you and makes you better able to deal with the stress that you're dealing with. What I see, especially with these high school kids, middle school kids that are now being affected, that are taking up guns and going to school and shooting kids, I wonder how much of that is they're doing it because it's this echo chamber that they're in, that social media, the algorithms are showing you what you've already seen or similar things to that. So you end up just being reinforced with anything that you want to go down that path, or, unfortunately go down the wrong path for even a little while. The algorithm's going to keep wanting to show you, introduce you to more people that are like that. And it makes me wonder how many of those people that have now not committed suicide, and they're sitting in a jail cell regretting
Mm.
every moment of their life. And for the rest of their life, they're going to regret it, because in prison, I worked in federal prisons as well in the US for a short amount of time, for a couple years, and I can tell you, it's not lost on anybody that's in prison why they're in prison, and that they are stupid for being in prison. Nobody's proud to be there. The ones that are the psychopaths. And those, ironically, are typically the religious fanatics, tend to be the people that I encountered that were terrorists, and they committed an atrocity or murders, but they believe that their God approves of it. So therefore, what they actually did was right, and the whole world, that they're the ones who are being wronged, and or they're going to stand up for all the people that are being wronged, and nobody's doing something about this, and so I'm going to stand up and do something about it. A lot of people I've heard too, as I've been reading and studying on active shooters, will compare themselves to great leaders, military leaders, who were thought to be kind of crazy in their day, or, kind of way out there, but ended up, saving America, ended up, ushering in this new freedoms for slaves, for Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. They'll compare themselves to these great leaders and try to gain some of that glory for themselves in their mind. But like you kind of pointed out, where you are in Christchurch, nobody there under any circumstance is, unless they're following his footsteps, are going to ever think that what he did was even justified. Not only not right, but were justifiable in any.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what you said, it's this guy. He was a psychopath, and he got to the level where he convinced himself that was, in his mind, he thinks that it is justified, but he's the only one that does. And like you said, so it might be slightly different to, or it's going to always be different with different situations, different types of attacks. For example, with school shooting, the motives might be completely different. But like what you were saying about how it goes in a bit of a continuum, it starts with those jokes. It starts with if you hear somebody saying these jokes and stuff, and then it starts getting more escalated over time, because they're actually convincing their own mind that, they're trying to get outside approval as well. They're saying things to their peers, but they're actually convincing themselves, particularly if it's a lone wolf type situation.
Yeah.
It's that's the way to identify it anyways. If somebody's actually starting to show those signs, then you got to absolutely jump on that quickly.
Again, because I'm very guilty of dark humor, and me and the guys I serve with, like, of course, we still throw around dark humor all the time. That's just a way of coping with dealing with a lot of stress. But it's once it gets to the point, to me, in my mind, where again you're surrounded, the algorithms, your group think of all the people that you're around online, where you don't have to go find these people, because they could be all over the country in all these little nooks and crannies where they don't have a lot of outside influence, and they're just kind of spouting what they heard somebody else say. And it's once they kind of group together and somebody starts formulating a plan of how they're going to take action. And I think that in America is one of the scariest things with the next generation, is everybody wants to be the one to go grab a hold of the flag of their cause and go demonstrate in front of somebody that they know the right way and everyone else is wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And it just, if everyone feels that way, like, there's only one real reality, and not everybody's going to be right. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of activism in America that is misguided. And again, it's just the regurgitating what they're hearing from the same people in the same echo chamber. So like you say, though, once it gets to the point where somebody's starting to talk seriously about somebody needs to do something about this, it tends to, again, with my law enforcement background, it tends to be somebody who's saying, they don't want to say, I'm going to do something about it. They always start out with, well, somebody needs to do something. Hey, somebody needs, and they're looking for somebody to give them approval, or to to kind of reinforce what they're saying and that it's right. And it only takes a couple of those people. And we see that from the high school shootings in Columbine, that from what I'm gathering now from the writings from the kids in their own journals and notebooks and stuff, that the one was more of the psychopath and the other was kind of Dylan was kind of more, obviously he had very deep-seated issues, and he was very capable of carrying out the violence that he did, and not to take anything away from that. He's absolutely guilty of everything that he did and all the misery he caused. But that the one who spurred it on might have been the other kid as opposed to him, and that it ended up just being this cycle of two people kind of feeding off of each other, but one kind of leading and the other one kind of, supporting him. And it only takes one supporter for you to have a movement, air quotes. I don't know if you've ever seen that TED Talk where it talks about the only important person to start a new movement is the very first person that agrees with the person trying to start with.
Going back to that mosque attack, I mean, there was a guy that did attempt to stop him, and he got up and tried to grab his weapon and started fighting him. And that spurred on, I'm not trying to say be the hero. However, in that obviously the most extreme situation, that guy had no choice but to fight back, which spurred on his son to try to grab him as well. And that could be a potential example there. But unfortunately, the guy did not survive. Yeah. He didn't manage to grab his weapon and got shot. Yeah. But, when I was sitting there at home and I thought, someone's driving around town shooting everybody in my town, I felt like I needed to do something about that. I couldn't just sit there at home. So I found another way to contribute. I wasn't going to grab I do have firearms, but I'm not going to load up my car and go fight them, because I know that it's already the police are already dealing with it. Imagine that, I'm not going to just turn up and then the police are going to see me carrying a weapon, and they know that
they're going to think you're another lone wolf.
So I just loaded up my car with as many medical supplies I could find. I had a whole bunch of, because I run a training company, so I just filled up the back of my car with Israeli bandages, just dressings, lots and lots of dressings and tourniquets or tourniquets.
That's awesome that you thought that quickly to do that. And that's where your average person, especially somebody with our background, having carried a gun for a living for a time and been in a combat situation, the automatic is to grab a gun and go stop the guy with the gun. But like you said, it takes wisdom, and that's somebody who actually has experience, who instead goes, if I show up there with guns, I'm also going to be one of the bad guys, and I'm likely to get myself murdered. So let's not do that, actually. But instead, what I could do is, and you saying that, bringing medical supplies. You could immediately, and this is just something that I thought of because this happened in Oklahoma City. As soon as the bombing happened, and this happened obviously 9/11 and all kinds of these major terrorist attacks in America, people immediately jumped onto social media and started getting everybody to run down to the blood bank and start donating blood, because they know there's going to be injured people who are going to need life-saving blood. And it literally might be the life and death of some person there that they didn't have your blood type on hand. To me, it's things like that, and you thinking on your feet like that really changes the way people need to see tragic events like this. It's tragic that it's happened, but it's tragic because it's about to happen again, and it's about to happen again, and all over the world, and it's not going to end. Terrorism has been going on as long as man has existed and figured out that they could just strike fear in other people's hearts by being extremely cruel to the people that they're, dominating in whatever instance. And then that makes other people scared to go up against them, type of a thing. So it's been happening forever. People need to think outside of the box. That's truly thinking outside of the box of what it is that you need to do, aside from just what everybody's automatic assumption of going and stopping the threat by yourself as a lone wolf yourself, or a Rambo save the day. Tell us a little bit, because we haven't really got to that. We're right at the end of the podcast, but tell us a little bit about your company and what it is that you train people to do, and kind of how you help that way.
I run a training company called Hawkeye Dynamics. We are a small team of ex-military and special operations veterans, but also medical professionals, trainers. Essentially what we do is we specialize in hostile environment training. So we want to run comprehensive safety and security training programs for individuals and groups that travel overseas to higher risk countries, because we want to provide anybody with the right skills and knowledge to look after themselves anywhere in the world. Yeah, so we try to make a highly immersive training program. So it's all scenario-based training. We try to make it as realistic as we can, with professional actors acting out situations and putting the participants under pressure, making them have to, make decisions, deal with dilemmas, all sorts of stuff. And we really try to prepare these people for any type of high-level security situations. For example, we would simulate an active shooter situation. We wouldn't just stand there and talk about it on a PowerPoint presentation. We would actually say, okay, these are the best practices. We're going to run, hide, or fight. Okay, we're going to get up out of our chairs and we're going to actually practice that within the most practical way possible. So we try to simulate those types of situations. And that's just the first part of our training. We do provide any kind of bespoke training as well. If we had a business or something that they wanted to do something different, that's cool. I mean, we've trained stunt teams on how to look more professional on camera, particularly around military type scenes and stuff, and it's good fun. And we just want to get people aware of what we're doing, and let everybody know that we exist, even though we're all the way in New Zealand. Probably the thing that sets us apart is probably just we can travel to you and we can deliver on site. So we can travel out, or take our international training team, and we can deliver it on site anywhere in the world. Well, almost anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah. No, well, that's awesome. And obviously I'm going to provide, along with this podcast, when it does come out, I'm going to provide links to your website and, any other contact information. That way people can reach out to you. There is a 17-hour, I'm East Coast. I'm here in Tampa, Florida. There's a 17-hour time difference. So it's actually the next day for you now. Today. It's Tuesday for me and Wednesday morning for you. So that's pretty wild. Well, that's great. Obviously, because of the internet, like right now we're having this conversation, very, powerful, having, been at a place where something like this had happened in Christchurch, and the terrible shooting that happened there. But again, it shows that there are people that are good out there that are thinking outside of the box and finding ways to help that community to heal, to get back to normalcy, and to just prove that what that guy who wanted to commit that terrible act didn't end up winning. Yes, he unfortunately took lives and he broke families and he hurt people, but the community is going to heal back, and people are going to learn lessons, hopefully, that will help prevent that from happening. And that's what you guys are doing, is helping to make sure that if this were to happen again, that there would be less loss of life, and that both on the physical side of stopping the shooter, but also on the medical side, and and just being able to spot somebody who's wearing body armor who's about to walk into a church. And it's the things like that where if you could surprise that person coming up behind them, as opposed to somebody in front of him having to try to take him on, in front of the gun. So that's what, whenever you told me about what you did, I was like, okay, I've got to have you on my podcast, because that's exactly what I want people to understand. And I'm going to try to share that with people I know as well. But again, you guys sound like you have a curriculum already set up, and you can walk people through it, and you can personally come and train them. And there's just different experiences that you guys are going to get, that if you come to America, and we all served in the same war, and we served in similar units, and we did similar things. We did a lot of things outside the box, but you're able to get things that maybe you haven't heard from a lot of the bigger podcast people, the bigger training companies in America.
I'd love to come over
anyways,
and
just want to
meet as many of you guys as possible. And yeah, that'd be
Absolutely.
so cool.
You're definitely going to have to meet me if you come up here to Tampa, or come to Disney World in Orlando.
Mate,
we're not
I'm
far
real keen.
away. So
Our whole team could come over, or just
awesome.
just getting over there and having some fun in the States is always good. So and then you guys are more than welcome to come over here.
Oh yeah, now that's on our bucket list, is for me and my wife to come to New Zealand. Like, that's literally the one place I want to go is New Zealand. It's from Lord of the Rings. Of course, a lot of people heard, like, that's where a lot of footage was shot, and then that kind of blew a lot of people away. They're like, wait, this isn't a CGI land? That's a real place? And we're like, yeah, that's New Zealand. Have you never seen the pictures?
You got to come over.
So
watch a rugby,
that's awesome.
Watch a rugby game. And
yeah, I definitely need to learn rugby. I've watched a few matches, but I definitely don't know it well enough. Amazing having you on. I really do hope that that you being on here, that more people have learned something from our conversation. And again, we want to hope to help stop school shootings and mass shootings, period. But we're also here to help people to learn how to spot that before it happens, right? To prevent it happening, and also to hope to connect with people that are out there that are kind of recognizing that they're going down a dark path, and they just stumble across our conversation, hopefully, and that makes them second guess continuing down the path that they're going. And we want to prevent people from even going that way, because all the pain and evil that spreads is what we want people to do, right? Is take a step back, think about what they're about to do. They're about to cost their own life, usually, and a lot of other people's lives, for no good actual reason, because he didn't stop mosques in New Zealand. All that does is bring the community together, and
any other effect to the resolve of our people here. We're pretty resilient people, especially in our whole city got destroyed by an earthquake, and back in 2011. And, we're pretty resilient. We've dealt with a lot of stuff before. I think that to just close off would be, if you ever think that, like you said, if there's indicators that you or someone else out there that is showing signs that that you're going down the wrong path, just reach out to somebody and talk to somebody, even if it's a family friend. Just get somebody to talk it through with you, because we need to think rationally, because you only have one life, and make sure that you make the most of it, because and try to contribute to your society, contribute to your friends and family. That's what's important in life.
Awesome. Yeah, and imagine he had, instead of planning all of that for evil, had spent all of that time instead finding a way to make everybody's life better, to build a business that helps people in that area. And then you get a lifetime of doing good, and people loving, even knowing you, and being, connected with you, instead of you're rotting in a cell for what you did once, which actually did the opposite of what you wanted it to do. And so anyways, yes, I agree with everything you've said 100%. And again, love having you on. Obviously, I appreciate you getting up so early in the morning to do this podcast in the middle of the afternoon for me, the day before you. Obviously, anytime you guys come down, let me know. I'm definitely going to provide resources. So if somebody is seeing someone else kind of going down that path, I'm going to have phone numbers of, national or by state phone numbers that you can contact. I don't know if you guys have that. If you do, definitely we'll connect on that, and I'll make sure to share that
absolutely.
in this podcast as well.
And even if you reach out to me, it's all good. And yeah,
absolutely, same here. Obviously, you guys can reach out to us as well. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with. Talk to somebody is the key.
That's an awesome thing.
Awesome. Thanks for being on, David, and really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.